Hello everyone, this is Rosemary, and this is number 2 in the series of using envelopes in your journal, the business reply. And I want to show you that you don't have to just use a napkin. You can use your strips of scrap paper that you have after a project. And so we will cover this with scrap paper, and not only will we cover it, but I will show you how to make it into a smaller envelope so it becomes an embellished envelope that you can use in your journals. I also am going to try to have you see that you can use the windows. You saw how I used my window last time. This is a Christmas card that I cut up, but I kind of knew it would go right in there. And isn't that cute to see Santa looking out the window? So again, that is my goal for this tutorial. And so here we go. As I mentioned before, you've seen these. I fold them about 6 inches, 6 1/4. Most of them tend to be standardized about 4 inches, but you can see this one's a little bit narrower, so it's probably about 3 3/4. And you can see how I just folded them. And now how do we make them into an envelope? This is where you see this fold right here? This fold, I'm going to cut this fold right there. And this allows me, this flap is free, and so is this. And this is going to become the flap of your envelope. So this is really nice and cooperative. It's nice and square. So all you need is some corner rounders right there. And this is straight. So that's going to defeat the whole purpose. But all you have to do is cut on that strip. Now I'm going to show you another one that's going to present a few more challenges. It's this one. So again, you can see it's oval and it has kind of a dip there. So here we go. I'm going to cut right there. And this is going to be, actually this flip, because we're going to, this little flap there, it's actually going to become part of the pocket. We're going to be covering this with scrap paper, so it can be used this way, and if you don't want to, you can just glue it down. But I use them, and because I'm going to be using it, I cut it down to about, ½ inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch, if you can see there. And I'm not really worried that it's straight. As you can see, it's kind of diagonal, but it's going to be this way, so I only have to make a hinge. It's already an automatic hinge. Now let's look at this flap. You're going to say, how can this, it's kind of not very nice looking. Well, this is what I do. I fold them in half, and as you notice, it's not a hard fold, it's a soft fold. And I use the more completed one, the one with a curve, and I use that as my guide. So I'm going to get, I only have to cut half of the flap right there. And you see, it pretty much matches. If I wanted to, like I said, you have to, oops, there I see, it looked a little bit off. Match it on the fold, and it's just a hair off. And at the same time, since you're cutting both at the same time, they should appear more symmetrical. And you can kind of see it right there. Now, you see this right here? Now, this, I do something else. I get like, some of this card, some more mail, and I cut it about 6 1/4. I had one that was a little bit smaller and it didn't suit my purposes. And this becomes a guide. And again, I'm going to use the same thing I did with this other one to make my guide. Oops. And it's a little bit more challenging because you're working with double thickness right there. So there's your guide, and this is what I will draw. And you notice I cut mine 6 inches. Now, sometimes As you can see, this might be uneven. So actually, I'm going to be using this to cut my scrap paper. But in any case, so here we go. So let's begin with scrap paper. But that's how I'm going to be getting this done. And this is what I used. And like I said, I just kind of do this. I just draw a line and then I cut it. This is another one, very much like this one I just did, right here. It's just the flap. This is a little bit more pointy. It's just going to vary from, you know, envelope to envelope. And this is going to be the back cover. And when you put it like this, looks pretty nice. So here we go. So, and this strip of paper that I just cut is like 4 inches wide. So, you know, when you have strips left over, this is wonderful. The story of my glue, right? These are wonderful to use. And we're basically making an embellished envelope from a business reply envelope. And so you glue it down. There you see me slathering that glue down. And you match it. And there we go. Now, this is almost on its way to being embellished. This is what I did right here on this one. Now, this is my, I have quite a few of these floating around, but when I was looking for them for the video, I couldn't find them. So, next, I'm going to decorate the front. So, here we go. And again, I am looking at 4 inches, and I have these strips cut at 4 inches. Now, I use my cutting board many times as my, when I'm at this process, to measure. And so I can see it's a little bit under 3 inches. So from here to here. Now, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to cut this paper 4 inches. I don't want it all the way down to the bottom because I would be wasting some of the paper. It just depends on it. So I'm going to cut it 4 inches. And you can see how I'm using my cutter as a measurement. 1, 2, 3, and there we'd have a 1/2 inch overlap. So and it's going to go like this, right there. Now, this is wonderful for papers that you kind of don't really love, but are okay. Not papers you hate, but you know, you could see it. It's not your favorite, but it's okay. It's okay. And so you see me putting the glue down, as usual. And there it goes. Now, you're starting to see this is pretty much like what I've been doing with the tissue paper, except it's much faster. Now, I have a piece right here. And if I wanted to cut it down, it would make a frame. So let me show you what it could be like. This is depends. Now you start getting your little creative juices going here on how you are going to envision your pocket. There you go. You see how it could be just a kind of nicer. It already has a built-in border for you. And yes, you can distress. I'm not distressing just due to the time. I don't think you need to see me distressing. Yes, I use distress ink, but I don't want to use it right now to take time away from. I know how I don't like to watch these very long videos. And so you can do that. And it is, Now, of course, we then go to the hinges. Here's a hinge. I talked about the hinges before, and I will just fold this one and glue it down. Oops, forgot to do my little triangles, but that's okay. And you're going to put one on the other side. And all I do with this is I just kind of measure it like this, and I cut it, fold it. You saw this in video number 1, but if someone is just watching right now, started watching this series, this is what standard pocket procedures. And you put it in there, and there you have your hinge. Some of you are going to probably wonder about sewing. With the pockets, it's a little bit trickier. This one, because it's a little bit deeper, yes, you could sew it right there if you wanted to. Sew all the way around. It just depends. But make sure that when you sew right here, it's close to that fold. Now, if you don't want it matching like this, and I'm not going to embellish because you could use pink. You could use any contrasting color that makes you happy. Blue would work. This is your own, you see how I had contrasting right there. This is your own contrasting preference. So, now, your flap. You have to decide what you want to do with your flap. How do you envision this envelope? Is it just going to be an insert that you're going to put in a pocket? And then you would be happy with it just like this? Are you going to put it in a journal? Let me show you what I mean by in a journal. Are you just going to, I know sometimes they're just put like this. Are you going to glue it down so it can open? You are going to decide. So I'm going to talk about what you can do with it now. This one right here doesn't particularly match, but I kind of like the contrast for this purpose. If you're going to glue it down on your journal so that it flaps open on a page, you could glue it simply like that. And it's okay. Now, if you're going to put it on a page where you want to link it on the other page like this, this nice square would be really kind of nice because it's almost a journaling opportunity. So it's really, this is where you get a little bit creative with your flaps. You can put a square, and then you can decide on this. If it bothers you, cover it. If it's okay just like that, that's okay. Now, this is another idea, using doilies. Now, the problem with doilies is they're really fragile. And so I decoupaged it on just some copy paper. The problem with that is the doily almost fades into it, but I think it would work kind of nice here. And so what I do is I try to match it from one curve to the other, like you're seeing right there. And then see how I'm creasing it? That's my guide. And even though the doily has faded, it's kind of pretty. It's kind of nice and soft. And you see how I folded it? So it can be, and you could use your cutter if you want it more precise. I'm using my scissors. I don't know which is faster. And now, I'm going to glue it on this flap. So these are decisions you make. Now, it depends. You could be happy. I would be happy with it just like this. Now, just like you saw on the napkin decoupage, there's a little bit of overlap. So what I'm going to do is trim it. That's what you were looking at right there. Now, this is the back. It's kind of pretty. It's an embellished envelope now. All I have to do here now is glue down the flaps. And there you go. You have an insert that is also an envelope. You can use it. Put some journaling cards inside of it. Put a, you know, a letter, whatever you wish to do on this. Now, some of you might say, you know, this is kind of, I don't like that right there. This is what you can do. Let me find my, where's my envelope with, where I try to have everything ready. And I think I can't, well, anyway, I can still do this. I get a book page. And I usually cut them about 1/8 of an inch smaller and than the actual, oops, this one's sticking. This is where it's uneven. And this is, you have to kind of watch that. And you push it in there. And so, this is what you can do here. You can glue this down. Now, you see this white right there that wasn't really noticeable? Well, get out your scissors. And how I get, oops, part of the tripod, I cut just a tiny little slit there to allow my scissors in. And I trim it. And again, remember, distress ink. Now, this, so what I do then, I'm not going to glue the whole page. What's inside is going to stay inside. I'm going to be just gluing the flap, maybe just a little bit there, because that's what's going to keep this book page in. So, putting some glue around the flap. And now, I'm going to trim. And if I had used distress ink, it'd be much more visible for me than it is now. So, as you're working with this, you can see we're making an embellished envelope from a business reply envelope. And the whole point of this is for you to use up junk mail on this. I'm not saying go and get your best envelopes. The whole point of this is using up your junk mail. So now you have a lining right there. You fold it. Needs a little bit more trimming there, probably a little bit more glue. I'm kind of rushing. You have an embellished envelope. Sorry about that. And all you need are your tags. Now, it's ready. I'm not going to spend time on decorating this because I think everyone knows, get out your stickers, your flowers, anything you can use. But what I am going to do is talk about how you can make these windows using the slits. Okay, so it's going to work the same. You're going to follow the same procedures I did right here, or I did with number 1. And here I have 2, and I've been using up mine with windows. So you notice I did some measuring ahead of time, and all I did was this. Because I kept forgetting because I'm concentrating on too many things. All I did was measure. So I got my ruler and said that first is at 5/8 inches, and the second one, it's actually 1 7/8, but I'm going to round it to 1 3/4. So, and I wrote them down because I wanted to remember. And again, you're seeing me, this was unfolded. I'm eyeballing it right here. You're seeing kind of the process real time. And this, I'm cutting the slit right there. And sometimes, you know, like I said, when you're watching TV in between projects, you can do a whole slew of these. Since this is going to be covered by scrap paper, this is going to become my flap, so I'm just going to need one flap, or hinge, excuse me. And okay, let's look at this. Let me fold that this way. And then I'm going to, okay, here's my envelope. And it's almost pretty even. And if you want to change the shape, you notice I'm changing the shape right there. You can. And there you have your envelope there. But the big, what I want to emphasize is how can you make a window here. So I have this friend, Tammy. Tammy gave me a bag of paper, and she says, well, I really want to see what you can do with this, because it was just things she had and wanted to get rid of. So I said, oh, sure, I can do it. In any case, what I'm going to tell you, this is what I'm going to use my cutter. And let me move the camera just a little bit so that you can see my cutter. All right. I'm going to have to move it down. I can't really. But you see how I'm lining it up at 1 inch. And I want it at 5/8. The first cut has to be at 5/8. So let's see, there's half.